Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our next adventure. So today I'm down on the outskirts of the River Plym, and the main focus of the day is to target a few mullet. So this part of the River Plym is an area which I sort of grew up on, really. I was based in Plymouth, and it's walking distance from my house. Now, we used to come down here on the high waters, and we spin for bass, and I've had a few flounders and bass spinning back in the day on lure rods when I first started fishing. And it's over the time I start targeting different species. I mean, I've had flounder, mullet and bass out of the River Plym. It's not an area I've put a lot of that time into, but over the years growing up and stuff, it's an area which was walking distance from my house, and we were able to come down of an evening and fire a few spinners across the water and see what we could pull out. Now, the main focus of the day is mullet. So we've come down here about an hour and a half ago, and we've sort of buried our ground bait into the shingle and stone area in front of us now. So we sort of like gauged it to the tree lines, okay? So when we know now we've gone away, mate of mine's just gone off for a golf lesson, believe it or not, and he's gonna come back and join me a bit later on. I've gone away, dropped him off, come back down, got a bit of dinner, had a bit of dinner, and left it an hour and a half. Come back down now to make sure we got the mark. And as I come down here, there was a bird mucking around from where we've sort of like ground baited the areas. So I can see some of it still there. I'm going to sort of like put a bit more in the ground in a minute, just to make sure we've got enough in there for the incoming tide. Now, it's top ends of the springs today. It's not a massive spring tide, but it's a fairly big spring tide, and I would sort of like see fish coming up past here. So what we want to try and do is target the moving fish as they're moving up, because no doubt they will travel right up through here. You can literally, on a massive spring tide, you can follow it up on the McDonald's side, and there's sort of like a picnic area there where you can park as a lay-by, and you'll get mullet as far as you walk up. I've seen them, and not specifically had them up there myself. This is sort of the area I would normally come to target them, but I know there's been some 5 pound pluses over the years caught just on the other side of the bridge. But it's an area here which is easy enough to fish. Park your car, walk down through the path, and the walk path, and it brings you down literally underneath the flyover. You've got the train track in behind, you can't miss it, and it's a very easy venue to fish. I mean, safety wise and fitness wise, anybody could do it. You can park your car up, walk down here, literally on the mark within 5 minutes. Cheap as chips, mullet in. I'll go through the ground baiting mix a bit later on, but we made it up last night, and the main thing what I find with ground baiting mix is to make sure you've got the right mix. Too much can be too much at times. Too less can be too less. But we've done the mix up. We've got the mix ready. It's not slush. We've made it up, and I'll go through a bit more. It's more like you can put it in the balls, and we're going to fish a feeder method. Now, if I was fishing a barbican, we've gone to the barbican again today already, and we've ground baited a couple of areas for later on. And what I might do, depending how we get on here, if we go there and there's fish there, is show you a method of targeting mullet with just a treble hook. So what you'd normally do is just put the bait on the treble hook, and if they're feeding, you can literally drop it down underneath the side of it and wait. And I tell you what, there's nothing better than just free lining bread full of mullet, because when they take off, it's just instant connection, no weight at all, and just on the fish. And it can be highly addictive, guys. It really can. I mean, mullet is something that I thoroughly enjoy, and we're going to hopefully get a couple out today. Okay then, so setup. So the first thing I've got, most importantly, is a ground bait. Bread, pilchards, sardines, mackerel, bluey, sprat, you name it, fish oils, all are really good for your ground mixes. You can buy Pacific background mixes, what you could use for carp fishing and that, like fishy ones and that from the carp store. But 9 times out of 10, the cheapest way to do it is get some bread and mix up yourself. I've done this last night, birds singing away in the background, and it's pretty much easy to do. You just turn it to breadcrumbs, add your mixtures and your ground baits, and then just leave it overnight. We've done one there now, and whatever we don't use today, we'll probably use tomorrow or maybe over the weekend or wherever we go. But 9 times out of 10, I get a big bucket. If I know I'm mulleting, and the trouble is with mulleting, if you don't get them, you want one. So you end up going somewhere else the following night, or go back to the same mark the following night. And it's something which I personally would like to see myself get a BPB with. My first ever fish was 4.8, and from the Barbican. It was at 1:30 in the morning. We ground baited some areas, and the guys I was with were fishing off pontoons, and I decided just to go off the main quay, and I seen this fish come up when we were putting some of the bread, what was like left over, and it was just floating across the top, and I thought, do you know what? And I could see the moonlight shining down in the water, and I got the bread up like that. I put what I know call a washing line, so basically a bit further up the tray, so I put a couple bits of bread just to get a bit of weight to be able to cast my bait. So it could be, obviously it's just a little tiny treble hook, size 16, and a little bit of bread on, literally like that. As it hit the water, I felt tap, bang, on, fish on. 4.8. I've had loads of 4s, I've had 4.6s, I've had a 4.7. I've never had another 4.8 yet, but I just can't beat that 4.8. And it's not something that I put loads and loads of time into, but I've always said when I get older, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to mulleting. I'm going to go and get a couple of decent mullet out. And as I said, it's for anybody can do this. I mean, loaves of bread, as I got here now. So what we normally do, we use the medium for the ground mix, and we use the thicker bread to go on the hook. And only the best, Hovis. So just find it molds to the hook better. Some of the cheaper bread, especially using for bread, for putting them on and stuff, it just holds. I know it's a quality bread, and I'm not going to try and do any sponsorship tips for bread or anything else. All I'm saying, guys, what I find is if you buy a decent loaf of bread, it gives you the mould and the fixture which goes on for your traces and your main baits. Obviously for baiting up areas and ground baits and that, you don't necessarily need it. So the other thing I've got here today is a little fixed spool. This is a Shimano Stradic. It's a well-known, highly recommended reel. It's got the fighting drag on the back, it's got the drag underneath, and I just find it's something which you don't need. A bit of a tackle tart really, but mulleting, it goes with it for me. And then with that, what I tend to do, not everybody does this, a lot of people will fish, depending where I am fishing, but if I'm fishing like places like this now and I can put the rod down and just watch it, especially on a nice day, I set my little tripod up here, so I'll just put the tripod down as so, and as the tide comes in a bit later on, I can put my rod on there. Sometimes, depending where I'm fishing, if I'm fishing areas where I know if that rod goes in the water, I'm not going to get it back. I've never fished 2 rods, but normally here, it's an area where if you've not got too many anglers down here, you could put one out to the right and one out to the left, you know what I mean? And if you get one down, I haven't got them with me, but I've got these built in, they're like tent spikes, which I tap over the back end of the rods, give it a couple of taps with like a little rubber mallet, and it just holds that rod there. So you can set the trace line. If it goes to go off, the butt section will lift up, but the rod won't go anywhere. The fish can just take line basically. Trust me, you will want your drags set, not locked on completely, but enough to allow the fish to take line, because when they go off, they go off. One of the hardest fighting pound fish in the water, I would truly say, and they are very addictive, guys, very addicted. As a lot of you have seen over the years with me, the ones that have followed me for many years, you have seen before some of the adventures I had back when I was doing the Total Sea Fishing magazine and Sea Angler. And yeah, it's something which I thoroughly enjoy. I mean, it's cheap as chips, as I said. Fishing can be quite expensive these days if you're going out and you're going to like up to the channel and stuff like that, especially on my own. I mean, if I go up to the channel, it's 50 quid gone, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's it. So after work, local places to find mullet, we'll go through in a minute, but this is what I'm using. Whee! I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the tip section down off that so I don't ruin it. So this, guys, is a Storm fire tip mullet. Okay, it's a 1 to 1.5 pound test curve rod. It's got a lovely tip, and I personally, a lot of people like the Porky Pigs. I find these are very good. They're cheap as chips if you can still get hold of them, and they've got obviously for when you bring it down and moving spots and that, I can clip all my rigs and that up just for moving. 9 times out of 10, not necessarily here, but a lot of the other rivers I fish, I will not stay in the same spot. I'll move up and down the river looking for the fish. Find the fish, you've got more chance of feeding them, getting them feeding, and then you can hold them. If you put ground bait in and stuff like that, a lot of fish will hold in that area until you get so many fish on, and then you can spook them, and then you'd have to move off to a different area. But let's get into it, guys. Get set up, and we'll see you back here. So then, really, I've just finished work, so I had the gear all in the car. This is something what I can do after work, and don't cost nothing. It's right on the doorstep for when I finish. And there's a lot of different areas where I tend to go depending on tides and stuff and that for mullet. But for this, not bad tide for this today especially. What we'll probably do is fish until high water is about 7:30 tonight. So we'll fish a few hours and get the fish moving up. Whether we stay for them to drop back is a different question. 9 times out of 10 I like them as they start moving up because they're ready to feed and stuff, you know what I mean? Moving back up the estuary. And hopefully we can get one on. There's a few different rivers which I'd like to include over the next couple of weeks. One of my favourites is the River Yelm, and I've had some good fish there. I've actually hooked into a beast, and I'll tell you about the story later with that because it's a funny one. But what I'm going to do now is get onto rigs. Now, a lot of people will rig up differently for mullet, and there is a lot of different ways to rig up for mullet, depending where I'm fishing. Now, where I'm fishing here now, I use a basic running ledger, okay? And what I like about the running ledger, it just allows no movement and no tension to the hook. And a lot of times when you're fishing a 2-hook pat or a 1-hook pat, you've got connection straight away with the lead there. And what I find sometimes, especially when they're finicky, being really finicky, it can put the fish off. So they can be very finicky fish, guys, and it's just a case of basically just putting the time and effort in. I mean, once you start catching them, you'll get the hang of it, trust me. But as I said, it is very highly addictive, and I do thoroughly enjoy it. Now, I've got pat rigs there, so I've got 1-hook pats and 2-hook pats, which I keep in the side there. Bubble floats and stuff. This is all my mulleting gear basically in this bag, okay? And it's just easy enough to store it all in. And for my main line, personally, I wouldn't use anything else, but it's very hard to get hold of. It's the Estuary 8-pound line, as strong as you like. You're not getting through that, guys. I've also got the X line there, which is really good. I've got that in 6-pound, depending how finicky the fish is. I've also got the 8-pound in the X line in 8-pound. That's really good as well. And I also got some 20-pound braid there, depending how finicky the fish are being. So hopefully, guys, we'll see if we can get a few fish out today, eh? But as I said, I'm going to use a basic running ledger here today. Some people will use different approaches for it, but I am going to use a running ledger. So it's like basically a running pat rig, allowing no tension from the hook. So when they pick it up, they can go straight away, and then I can just get right onto it. But I'm going to get that set up, and then we'll move on, and hopefully we've probably got a good hour at least of waiting time now, hour and a half maybe. But I've had fish very similar to this now, just as it's starting to come over the bank. And yeah, let's hopefully we get a few today. One thing I don't like to see, guys, what I just found, right, is this. So this is a trace which someone's left before. They're using a 2-hook pat trace, okay? It's got the lead on it, it's got the swivel on it, it's got everything there on it, okay? The only thing it's got bread still around some of the hooks on it. But the trouble is, if a bird comes along and takes that hook, okay, that's going to take that back, and it's going to be either stuck with the lead on it, or it's going to do damage. So especially when you're fishing for mullet, be obviously careful for your surroundings. Try not to leave this sort of thing lying down on marks and stuff. It's not good, it's not big, and it's not clever. And as I said, it's just common sense, really. I mean, take your hooks home, take your rubbish home, and don't leave that lying around for wildlife. I mean, it's just stupid. It's probably just done on a last minute thing and stuff, someone packing away and that. But at the end of the day, if a bird comes along and does take that hook in, it's going to do some severe damage. But I'm going to put that back in the bin now. I'm going to put it in a bag and just take it home. I might have a lead. I might keep that lead. They obviously didn't want it. So yeah, apart from that, we'll try and see if we can get a few fish out today. So guys, as I'm about to set up here now, I've got my scissors, okay, I've got my trace line, and we're just going to get going, really. So I've got some different feeders what I'm using. I've got these bigger size feeders, and I've also got some of these small cage feeders, okay. So what I'm going to be using is these small cage feeders at the minute. They got a little clip on, and that's, you can just take them off, fill them up and put them back on. These ones here are 15 grams, so literally perfect, this sort of thing, really. Enough weight on there as well to obviously make sure the hook takes off. And yeah, let's give it a go. So that one there, So what I'm going to slide on first. Like that, okay. So that's the first part done. Then, somewhere in here, I have these little bait stops, okay. What I tend to do with these bait stops, put my rubbish back in, just to protect the swivel more than anything, okay. So I'll take that on. You can put 1 or 2 down really, okay. You can also set these further up so they act like as a boat rig. So when your fish takes off, it will allow it to take so far and then it'll kick in. I find that quite effective as well. So pull that back down. Put one on there now like that, run it back over. So that's on there like that, okay. And then what I've got here somewhere, if I can find them, in these here. So these are in my little, they're in with my little treble hooks. Some little miniature swivels. Okay, these are actually from Sakuma, but they, when I say miniature, they are miniature. Okay, so what I'll do with that now is I'll put that down, and when I say miniature, I mean miniature, tiny, 45-pound test strength, and ideal, that goes in like that. When I get these, always lick. The main thing with mulleting, guys, you need to make sure the knots are properly put together. You need to trust what you're doing. You need to do it properly. And don't be afraid to pull, okay? Because if you need to lock into a fish, you need to make sure that everything's there and everything will cope with what you're doing, okay? So that's that there now. So that, what happens with that knot there then, that will come in and protect the back of my swivel, like that, see that? And that just stops for that lead going down there now. If I'll bring this around. Swim feeder. Whee! Coming in like that, okay? And that there just cushions it there then, okay? When I'm bringing the fish in and stuff, or when I'm bringing it back in to rebait up, its job's done. I went into Matt's at Southwest Sea Baits yesterday to pick up some, I'm running out of Estuary, and I wanted something where I could put on as my trace line. And this is £9, it's Sakuma fluorocarbon, and I'm going to use this today for the first time, see how I get on with it. So basically what I'm going to do here now is, water's starting to fill up now, so it is fish o'clock in a minute, it will be fish o'clock. So I'm going to basically put that in like that. As I said, you've got to trust your knots. So I've gone around 7 times, okay, with this. Gone back in, and then what I'll do, I'll pull back through the top, like so. Slaver, and then pull the knot down, okay? This is important now. See that? I'm putting a lot of strength on that now, and that's what you need to do. You don't be afraid to test it. If it goes in your hands, it's not strong enough. As simple as that, okay? Now, if you're doing pat rigs, I'd be making them the size of my palm, slightly bigger, no longer than that, okay? Because I'm using a running ledger, I'm going to go slightly longer. So I'm going to use roughly 12 inches, okay? And then I'm going to snip that off slightly longer for my hook. As I said, I'm down here targeting a big fish. I'm down here down to target a 5-pound fish. Because I'm using a slightly bigger hook and a stronger hook than I would normally use. If you just want to go mullet in, the smaller hook, the more fish you're going to catch. It's simple as that. A lot of smaller fish won't take that sort of size hook, but especially with the bait I'm going to be using as well, especially what I found on the Yelm, a bigger sort of size bait, the bigger ones tend to just nab. And if you've got a lot of fish there, and a lot of smaller fish feed in, the bigger ones will come in. As a lot of ones are like pecking around it, the bigger want to come in and smash it. And fingers crossed that can work like that down here as well. So down through. So we'll pull that up like that, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down through that loop I've just created. Pull tight, lubricate the line, and then pull down, and then don't be afraid to apply pressure at the end, okay? So I know now that that's set, and then I can afford to come back up like so, and that, guys, is my swim feeder and mullet setup. That can go around in the tide, and put a little bit of ground bait in that as well, with something on the end of it, and hopefully that will do the business for me. The next thing I want to go through for anybody starting a mullet fish, I'll tell you the story in a minute when I get a bait in the water, but make sure you're setting your drag accordingly, okay? So on this reel, I don't want it tight, loose, but I want it to be able to lock in like that, okay? And if I need to let drag off, I can do so. So I've got it set in like that at the moment. That's a bit too much. Then I lock it into fight mode. Still taking line. It's not enough. That there. So I've got enough tension on that if I'm pulling hard, right? So if anything goes to go, it will take line before it goes. See that now? But at the end of the day, if I need to tighten into a fish or play a fish or lock in or maneuver a fish away for obstacles and stuff like that, I can do so. I can let that drag off now. That goes like that. It's a bit too much for my liking. So it's finding that balance. It's about it there. I'm liking that. We're not going to be a million miles away from the rod, so I should be all right, okay? Right, next thing to do, let's get the bait on. Okay, I'll put the stuff away so it's all tidied and everything's there, ready to rock and roll. Okay, so my next thing is to bait up. Now, I've got the chum, ground bait basically in here, is loads of bread, which is basically blended up in the liquidizer, pilchards, sardine oils and stuff like that in there. Not too much, but as you can see, these, when it starts getting to later on, we'll be making these type of balls. And especially if you've got any wildlife like swans and stuff like that around, if you chuck the bread on the water, they go for it straight away, where if you lower that, it will sink, and once it's sunk, it will just disperse around the area. Now, what the main thing is, that will go into nothing as it dissolves, and it's basically ground mix, it's scent, and it brings fish in and starts them getting them going. And when you present your bread next to it, 9 times out of 10, you can get them to feed. So that's the main key with it, really. But what I'm going to do here now, I'm not going mad, okay, with this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my thumb on end, and I'm going to feed some of this bread down through like so, okay? I don't want to compact it like properly. I want it to come out and disperse as it gets wet. So I don't want it to completely go in, you know what I mean, and not be able to do its thing. But that's that, okay? So if you see that now, that's my little swim feeder, and then I'll show you the baiting up on this hook here now. But as you can see, it just bounced on the floor then, and it started to come out already. So I know it's doing its thing. So that's that. Only the best, Hovis. So I'm gonna rip the bag off like that. What I normally do 9 times out of 10 is chuck all the bread in the top there. To put that back in my bag now, and it's just a safe away from the animals and stuff like that. You get birds. The main thing you do get down here, and if you don't like rats, guys, probably best to stay away. You do get a lot of rats, and I can see there's some traps and that set up around. As I was walking along here, my old man's terrified of rats, and I mean terrified. I don't mind them too much, but there was one that probably, I would say, about that big. It was well over 1.5 feet, huge. But yeah, if you don't like them, but basically you can do different things, right? I just tend to take the crusts off, and some people are going to laugh, and that's my OCD or whatever. It's just I'm very picky when it comes to fishing. I like things like how they like to be done. A lot of people just move it around, but I tend to take the crusts off like so. That just gives me something to work with then, and I can look at my bait. So what I normally do now is just look at these as thumb-sized baits. So I'll try and look like that now, okay? And then what I'll do is I think, you know, I mean, that's a nice size bait. And then I'll basically cut it around like so, and that gives me a square then, okay, to work with. Now, that could be quite big. All I'll do is I'll basically set my hook into that, right, and then I'll basically mold around the outside, like so, okay, like that. So all I've done then is I've got the bread there, which I can mold around the hook like so, all right, but it's got the fluffy parts on it, so if a fish comes along, it can nab it, okay, and they will mouth that. As it goes to take over, guess what? Hook point's there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chuck that one in, see if we can get a fish on it. So at the minute, obviously, a lot of the areas where I've breaded up and ground baited, they're still not covered with water yet. So I'm looking for a slightly bit more depth. So off here now, I go too far, I could go more shallower. I could go too close, I could be more shallower. So I'm sort of like mid-ranging the casting distance to the middle of where I'm going to fish, and hopefully that just pays off. By getting it out there slightly and have it on the bank, I've got more of a chance of getting one now. I think it's slightly too early myself. I like to see the water flooding up over this bank, and that'll be the time, but better to have a rod in the water than not, eh? So we'll get one out now. But I'm basically, I don't even need to cast this. I'm sort of like laying it out like that, pulling it down and around, and that's it. That's it. So I can set my tripod up there now, and hopefully we can see a few fish out of here today. I mean, Gavin's going to be here around 4 o'clock. The time is now, I'll tell you, 3:30. So yeah, he's in the middle of his golf lesson at the minute. For you, those of you who know Gavin, those of you that don't, Gavin is a guy what's done a lot of the ray fishing over Christmas on the videos and that with me. We had some really good sessions. I worked with him, and we went to golf last year. We played with a little golf in that, and I'm not very good at it. I don't think it's something I'll ever be very good at. And to be honest, it's one of them, innit? It's just, I enjoy playing it, but he wants to get good at it. So he's been having lessons and stuff, and he said to me, if he's not good at it by this time next year, he's quitting it altogether and getting back into sea fishing. So I'm hoping he don't pick the swing up and that, because it'd be lovely to see him back at it all the time. I mean, very fantastic angler, knowledge-wise. What I find a lot of the time, guys, and with a lot of the guys which I know with good anglers and stuff, all of them have got that one thing in common: they think outside the box, and that is a lot to do with fishing. If you want to catch fish, you've got to think outside the box. And sometimes the way of catching them, or the ideas, or the ties and stuff like that, the ideas behind it, is right in front of your face, but you need to think about what you're doing. If something's not working, change the method. I mean, where we are here today, we're trying to catch passing fish, okay? And the main thing here now is to try and hold them. So the main thing with us is ground baiting. So as the fish are coming up the river, they'll sort of, because this is the main estuary beyond this bit, so that is the cross country on the way to St David's, probably on the way from Penzance. But as you come up around here, it goes into a massive estuary. So this is really where, going up the top end now, a lot of fresh water meets seawater, but it tends to hold fish. So as I said, I've seen a lot of decent fish come up over here all the time, so hopefully we get into a few. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, just to get my rod off the floor, put it on a loaf of bread. And then what I'm going to do on top of that then is put that there. So if that tip goes round, that's going to stop it from moving around. So it's just tip action going around. The last thing you want to do is lose your rod, guys. I ain't going to lose my rod here, but I know guys, and I've seen it happen, and I've done it myself. You put a rod down, a mullet takes it, and it will take a rod off, especially those bigger fish. I mean, a 4-pound fish will take your rod and reel halfway down that river within minutes. I mean, seconds, it'll be gone. And if you're fishing dark, murky water and that, the chance of you getting it back are one of them. But we'll show you the tip here now. What you get with these is lovely tips, okay? So if you look at that there now, lovely little flimsy tip. Lovely bite detection. You've got everything you need in that rod. The only thing really what I'd like to have seen, more power going up to here and a really flimsy tip. Just sometimes, and I don't like the porky pig, if I'm honest, because of it, especially the bigger ones, because it's more like a through action. And what I find, especially if you're anywhere where you need to lock into a fish. So where I've fished before, a lot of times you've got like structures, metal structures or piers or places where you can't let fish run. And you need to make sure that your gear is being able to cope with that, okay? What I find, especially fishing smaller hooks sometimes, if you lock into a fish like that, you could pull the lips off them. I mean, if you get a lip hook on the side, with the bigger hook as well, as they take it back, it normally goes like, it tends to lip hook them inside the mouth more, which you get more control of the fish. At the end of the day, no one wants to see damaged fish. And at the end of the day, guys, especially when you've got the disgorger there, and that after the time when they're laying, you can literally just push it in and pull the hook back, and it's out. So it's one of them, guys. At the end of the day, it's something which I find really important when you're mullet fishing is fish care. A lot of people use like slings to weigh them, especially. Fish mats is another good one, especially on the bank and stuff. What I tend to do, I've got a big towel now, I put the towel down. Or if I ever forget a towel and stuff, you find a bit of grass or something soft for the fish to be put on while you're doing your bits and pieces. If you've got anybody next to you, try and keep the fish in the water as long as possible. Obviously, they're quite hard to just be, if you get a fish of a lifetime, the last thing you want to be doing is put it down to the water and it kick off and then get away. So the main thing is to get the fish photoed, weighed as quick as possible, and the main thing for me is getting them right back in there. I mean, some people keep mullet for bait. It can be a fantastic conger bait and stuff like that. Me personally, I like to see them go back every time and hopefully get that big, because that's what we all fish for, guys, those big 10-pounders. And for anybody that doesn't like mullet fishing, I suggest you really try it, honestly, because for me, it's just a very fun way of fishing. And as I said, cheap as chips, a couple bags of bread, loaves of bread, make up some ground bread mix, put a few like leftover, especially that sort of stuff. If you go fishing, you've got leftover sand eel, leftover bluey, leftover bits and pieces like that. What I used to do is tend to put it into a bag and put it in a box. And when I was mullet all the time, I would liquidize it all up with the bread and that, and you've got your mix then. So it's not wasting bait. Half the time, I'm never going to bring bait home. I'm never going to reuse like defrosted sand eel, defrosted bluey, defrosted squid and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, you wouldn't eat it yourself. That's the way I look at it. And the main thing for me is to make sure when you're fishing that the bait is as quality as you can get it. And the last thing you want to be doing is sitting there with a bait which has gone off and the fish turn its nose up at it, where if it was a nice big fresh bit of bluey, it would smash it up straight away. But a lot of people agree with that, people don't. It's just the way I fish at the end of the day, and everybody's got their own ways of doing things. But there's probably a lot more advanced mullet anglers out there than me, I can assure you that. I mean, if you're down in Plymouth area and you want some advice, my advice would be to you personally is to pop into Southwest Sea Baits, which is positioned on the Barbican. Matt Perry, the owner, fantastic bloke, and a lot of knowledge, but he's got probably one of the best mullet anglers in the country, works in the shop, Martin Larkins. And some of you remember Martin from the shore caught record holder for the conger reel, which was caught back in the day. And fantastic angler and a lot of knowledge when it comes to mullet fishing. And I mean, when I first started mullet fishing, I'd go into the shop and I'd end up spending a fortune because he said, "Oh, have you got that? You want to get that? You want to get that?" And at the end of the day, once you've got the gear, like I've got there, it's probably, I'd say 100 quid's worth of gear there in my mulleting gear. But once you've got it, that's all you need. You know what I mean? The only thing you've got to really do is top up every once in a while. As I said, the rod I got here now, 60 quid. reel I picked up second hand for 80 quid, and it's just one of them. You haven't got to spend that on it, guys. You could pick a rod up like a carp rod, cheap as chips. You could pick a fixed ball, like little tiny fixed ball reeled up for like 19 quid, maybe 20 quid. Bit of a tackle type myself, so it's one of them, innit? But hopefully all that goes to waste now, because all we want to see is us get a fishing. Okay guys, starting to get a bit chilly, and as you can see, the tide's flooding right in now. You can see the where we've put the ground bait mix, the oil's coming up from the pilchards and the sardines and stuff, and hopefully that's going to get the scent going. And hopefully now, as you can see, all the sort of like, it's sort of like a gravel area, stone area, as it drops into the main channel, and the water's starting to come up over the top now, so that's all the ground bait what we've put in underneath is going to start mixing around and dispersing throughout the area. And hopefully, as the water starts to make now, we should see a few fish starting to turn up. I'm hoping. It's not a bad tide for it. It's the top end of the spring, so it is sort of time where you see the fish coming up through here, and hopefully we can get a few out. I mean, it's not guaranteed every time, and if we don't get them today, I will still show the video, because that's all part of fishing, guys. You can't guarantee fish every time, especially mulleting. But I think that's what keeps you coming back and back with mulleting. I mean, a lot of guys venture out targeting mullet, and for those that put the time in, do get a lot of good rewards. But as we said, what I like to see, as you look down, you start seeing V's coming up through. I've had it on one day on the Yelm, as I was telling you earlier, and basically what happened, we got to the mullet mark, and a mate of mine, he only just started mullet fishing, sea fishing. He bought 3 bait runners, Shimano bait runners. We got to the mark, and I've been helping him out, like putting him on a few different marks and showing what's what and stuff like that. And he said, Andy, I want to thank you for obviously helping me out and stuff like that. I want to give you one of these reels. I don't need 3. I said, don't be silly, you got 3. He said, I don't need 3, mate. I've got 2. I got them for like, and use them for like flounder and stuff like that. Please take it. You got a mullet and a nice mullet and reel. I said, are you sure? He said, yeah. So he gave me this reel. I was like, ideal, mate, you're a star. So I put it down, set the bait runner on. I thought, ideal, he's a legend, you know what I mean? Set the thing on that. And what I didn't realise, the bait runner was broken on it. So there's me fishing away, and I can look into that down, and I see this big V coming up through. I took Pat on, I'll never forget it. And I was watching this, I took Pat was to the right, I was watching this V come right up through, and it come away from my bait. I thought, it's not going to do. Next minute, no, I see it turn around. It must have picked my bait, my 2 bits of bread up in the water. The rod tip went over. I went to grab it, but because it was fixed, it went dunk, dunk, gone. I was like, no. Big lesson, well learned. And I'll tell you, I was pulling my hair out. I was like, no way, you can have that reel back. I'll give it back to him. But no, you need smooth running reels. Everything needs to be working, and it's just a way I like to fish, really. I want enough tension in that line so for the hook to set, but at the same time for the fish to be able to run. And I find that quite important with mullet, depending what type of areas you're fishing. If you're fishing areas which I tend to do, where like pier areas and structures, underwater structures and stuff like that, then you've got no choice but to lock into the fish. And with that, you've got to have the right gear. You've got to be able to play the fish, know how to turn the fish, and that's the main things of it. So you get fish running that way, turn the rod to the side, keep full tension at all times, and obviously just play the fish as it starts running that side and that, you know what I mean? And just work the fish to the shoreline's the main thing, or work it to the surface. They got the habit of, when they see the net, of darting back off. So what I tend to do, I have the net there, because the worst thing to do is have a net all the way over there. I should have scales and the sling set up. I've got it in my bag, but I don't do it. And the reason I don't do it, to me, it feels like, oh, we're going to get fish today. And then blank, I mean, if you leave it in a bag, it's a bonus, isn't it? But hopefully we see a few lines coming like that up over the water, and we can see a few fish out. So as you can see, it's flooding right in now. Going to bring the rod in. I had no bites or nothing. Bit of a stick on that. It's definitely worth changing your baits. As you can see, that thread's still on there, but just want to make sure it's still there. Oh no, it's come off. So as you can see there now in the chamber, okay, that's full up still. So really that was in there a little bit too tight. I mean, some of it's come out, but yeah, it's out now. Chuck it back in. So we'll get another one baited up. Whatever happened to the sun. Hey, whatever happened to it? So, got the bread on top. These little buckets are ideal because they've got the inside compartment. So what it allows me to do, it allows me to have a bucket on top sort of for baiting up. And I've got the mix in there like so. Any freshwater fishing shop will sell them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the ground mix in there first. Okay. So I'm literally going to, I'm not going to put it in like that, like I did last time there. Just allow it to go in like so. The whole point of it, you want it to come out. So that can come out like that now. Okay, that's that there. Now for the bait, exactly the same again. I'm gonna have a thumb-sized bit of bread around like that. Some people do it as a parcel. I got a little tip from a good mullet angler a few years back when we were fishing the mark further up north, and all he was basically doing, I'll show you there like that now, is basically putting the hook on the edge, so like going like a diamond, and then what he's doing is basically putting it back in, and I found it quite effective because what I'm basically doing now is hiding the hook, but at the same time what I can do is I can bring that back down through the bread, and I'm literally disguising the hook. Okay, so I'm putting the line round and rubbing around the outside of it. So that's all on the hook shank now, right? And then I can basically get my fingers and manipulate that bread in there like so. But the good thing about this now is I can basically get my scissors like that, wet it up a little bit, right? And that will see the mullet come along playing around the outside, but you can't feel my hook until it's over the top of it. A lot of people do it different way. I just play around a little bit. I mean, a lot of people like to just do a parcel. I know when my mate of mine, Lee Treby, when he's mulleting, he likes to do a parcel. I've seen that work very effectively, and since I've seen it working, I've gone that way. I mean, it's on there, and the hook's totally disguised. And the good thing about it, when it starts pecking around and that, it's got a hook point there just to nab on. So what I'll do now is I'll get that bait in the water. My ground mix is a little too loose on that one, but we'll put a little bit more in. Look, some people say how much to ground bait. What I'll tend to do now, I'll do it before I cast, is put a little bit in, but not loads. You don't want to overdo it. So basically what I'm doing here now is just basically making like a golf ball, okay? Golf ball size balls, and I want to have this around where I'm casting, okay? So basically I'm going to look out towards that tree there. So I've got to aim where I'm going to like look at, and I'm going to chuck that ball in out there like that, okay? That's the first one. Get another ball made up. I'm going to aim a little bit more further than that now, okay? It's the second one. I'll do one more, sort of baiting up my swim, but because of the size I'm doing them, that one goes right over the back. That's perfect. So that part of the area now is all breaded up. Obviously with the incoming tide, it's going to start moving the bread up the river, okay? So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to do one more. I'm going to aim to the left hand side there, okay? And as I said, guys, they're only sort of like golf ball sort of size. I just want to get this one a bit more out there. That's perfect, okay? So that's that sort of area breaded up. I'm going to chuck a couple more in to the right now for Gav, because he'll be turning up in a minute, and I want to see him get a fish out as well. Not massive size ones. If it's open coast, I'd sort of use the bigger ones really. And there it is. So it's a couple out for him. Go one more. One more. Stinks. Lovely. Only thing left to do now is get this one out. Okay, so I'm going to sort of like look where I casted last time. So I'm not really casting really, it's a little thick. That's laid down. Big G's here. Gav's just turned up now. There you go. And that is us fishing again. Keep that tip nice. Big G's here to help us pull a fish out now. Okay guys, we're all set up fishing away. As Gav just said a minute ago, it's passing fish you're fishing for at the moment. So in places like the Barbican and like harbours and stuff like that, you can get the fish to hold in one area. But what we got to try and do here now, with the whole point of ground baiting, is to make sure that when the fish come up past, they sort of focus on the food and the ground bait, what's in front of them, and get them to hold. If you can get 1 or 2 fish in holding, you'll 9 times out of 10 get a lot of fish holding. And if we can try and get a few fish here, there's a good chance we'll see a few fish out today. But we could also blank. It's one of them. It all depends when they come up through. I mean, I think you've had them here before, haven't you? Further around, yeah. I've had them here before. You prefer the back tide up there?
On the other side.
Yeah. We always found here on the flood, you'd get them, and then you'd have to wait and wait and wait, and then you'd get them on the back as well, just as it was coming down through.
Flood on this bit,
yeah.
On the other side, but for some reason, I find they push up too quick.
Yeah, because it narrows.
Yeah, push up really quick up further up.
Yeah.
But as you're coming back, they sort of just hang back with the tide, and then slowly work
put it down, yeah.
You get a little bit longer with them. You can fish it right down to low.
Surprising how far they go up, isn't it?
They go right up past the mountain park.
Yeah, right the way through, yeah. So guys, as you can see across the other side of the water here now, we've got a couple of geese. And the trick is to make sure if you've got any type of birds, swans, geese, whatever it is, going near your bait hooks where you got the where your bait is to give it a couple of claps and just try and move them along really, because the last thing you want to do, they got quite long necks and I've seen it happen, and it's just not good really. The last thing you want to be doing is hooking into a geese or a swan or a bird. So it's just they are hungry things, and they do tend to like bread on the top, and they also like to have bread underneath. But normally if you can give it a couple of claps, they will move along, just because they don't want to be near you. But yeah, as I said, I've seen them go into the water with their long necks, go down, pick up, and yeah, it's just not advisable really. But as you can see here now, lovely evening in April, getting towards May now. It's all about to happen. Summer species about to come into full effect. But yeah, good tide for it, no doubt, as it all starts to flood now. I mean, on the Plym itself, you'll see the main channel sort of like filling up first, and it will start going over the mud banks, and normally you see the fish start to make their way up. So no doubt we'll see a few mullet here today, I think. Okay guys, so we've just seen some fish jumping. There's a paddle boarder that just went up past us, and just as he was coming through, you can see like the trace of the paddleboard going back through as he's coming through. Back end of it there, then you see a mullet jump, mullet or a bass. So hopefully there's a few fish about. We're starting to see some rippling effects to the left hand side of us down there now. That's birds down the bottom end. It was right where that I saw like that circle of leaves and all that is there now. Probably about 40 yards to the left. But a lot of our ground bait from earlier on would have made its way down, and then what stuff we've been putting in since then would have made its way up. So it'll be everywhere around here at the minute. Hopefully it's holding them in. So starting to get a couple of bites here now. The trouble is, especially with what we've done, the method way we've targeting these mullet here today, we're using ground bait to bring them in. And because there's that much ground bait on the floor, they'll be tail whipping it, they'll be running through it, and they'll just be basically smashing through the lines. It's what's known as a line bite, basically. So it's a false indicator, but you just got to make sure when you're getting those bites, because all it does, it takes that one fish to actually pick the bait up, and away you go. Another train passing through. There's fish here now. There's fish here. It's a good sign. The wait is over. The wait is over. Just need one to pick it up now. Well, I do find that this mark, you do get a lot of smaller fish, but there is tornadoes in with those big, smaller fish, so you need to obviously fish through them. That's the whole point of fishing a slightly bigger hook, and hopefully just trying to get those 4 or 5 pounders. Tide's starting to push in there now, isn't it? And yeah, we're not left with a lot of room here at the minute. As I said, waders can be your friend here. We'll probably tuck back up in here in a minute as far as we can get down, and it's the only thing you can really do, really. But it's always a pleasant evening. Fish showing over towards the overgrown tree. Just need that monster tornado in our baits now. Still no joy at the minute, folks. So next bait coming out. Very short of room here at the minute, so we're trying to move our boxes around and not get wet feet. But see if we can get one out here then. That one's down there like that. Keep going. As I said, it's one of them mulleting. You've got to find them, and just because they're not here on this tide doesn't mean they won't be here on another tide. So 9 times out of 10, what you would probably do, especially, you don't want the neat tides fishing this mark. You want the sort of like building tides, and they tend to push up. But as I said, we've seen a few surface fish, and there's one just jumped by the bridge there now. But 9 times out of 10 there is a lot of smaller fish, but there is always that tornado in there, so it's a waiting game really. But still got an hour of the incoming, and as Gav said, you can get them on the backing tide at the same time. I find the flood is quite good here normally, but you do get get them on the ebb. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. So folks, not a lot to shout about at the minute. Nothing to shout about at all. We were just saying a minute ago, it's it's quite quiet. I mean, normally you spread up the area in front of you and you would see a few fish by now, but it's I'm starting to think that it's not our night tonight. I mean, you can see the bread where we've been baiting up and that just sat there still, so the tide isn't ripping through, so there's guaranteed to be scent and ground bait out there, and obviously the bread's coming back in off the hooks, which is always a good sign. But yeah, there's no fish yet, so I'm going to bait this one up. I can see some movement down there. See that, Gav? Hopefully over high water we'll see one out, but if not, we're out having a go, and that's all you can do, innit? But we will try and get out next week and have another mullet adventure. But apart from that, got to keep trying. So, we've got a bit of bread there out. That's one here, isn't it? Oh, that's thick. So. Yeah, it's fish coming through now, guys. Hopefully. We only need one out for the camera. Both trying to bait in as quick as we can now. Be nice to see one out. It really would be. Just going to quickly grab a handful of that ground bait there, mate. We are literally no room here at all at the minute. Just have to do, mate. So no room at all. Just trying to get them in the feeders. Just going to chuck them in round like that. Let's try and get one in there before these fish move up through them. So waders is an advantage here, really, especially if you're going to stay in this one spot. In theory, we should move to the other side and get those fish as they're moving up through. It's the thing with mulleting, normally to get them you want to be moving all the time, but we've sort of like long day at work. Gav's just got back from his golf lesson and one of them, isn't it? Let's try and get that rod up a bit further. Slight pressure on that tip now, and the sun's coming out to play for it, so hopefully just need that rod going over with a nice 5-pound fish on. You can see Gav's just about to cast his out now. I'm going to move out the way for him. Underarm lob, boom, straight in that water, and yeah, that's all we can do, but lovely evening. Better than being sat at home watching EastEnders anyway, isn't it? But I will say one thing. I went to Tesco's this morning to pick up the bread and that. And Sean, if you're watching, okay, so I met your wife this morning in Tesco's. She said, I recognise you. I said, do you? I said, I got one of those faces. She says, no, I've been watching you. And I said, really? She said, yeah, you're always on my telly. My husband loves all the programmes that you do, and I quite enjoy them as well. So I said, oh, I'm glad you enjoy them. So it's a big shout out to Sean. And yeah, hopefully tell her the bread didn't work. But no, it's always nice to meet the viewers of the channel. 6 o'clock this morning, I didn't realise I would, but there you go. Getting some ground bait out there now. I'll chuck some on that side as well. She said, guys, golf ball sizes, that's all you're doing, getting your putt in your hand like that. And I'm going to break that into 2 really. Alright, so I've got 2 there now. So as you can see, there's literally no room here at all at the moment. And you can see a few breaks in the water. few ripples coming up through. But as me and Gav were just saying a minute ago, it really is, guys, one of those. The thing is, when you're fishing areas like this, you've got to move up and down with them. It's not like fishing in like a one set area where you know they're holding. They're moving with the tide. It's a lot like gilthead bream fishing, mulleting. You'll get them at low water in a certain area, then you've got to move back up into different places. So necessarily, if you're fishing like an estuary mark for like giltheads or mullet and stuff, you normally start at the bottom of the low water and then mid-tide move back up to somewhere and pick like 3 or 4 marks. The trouble is, 9 times out of 10, we're quite lazy anglers, aren't we, a lot of us? And me especially, I'd rather go somewhere low water than move up to high and just got to wait by the time you set up on that. But if you're travelling light, one rod, half the time it don't matter. I mean, there's a place in East Devon where I go mulleting, and I'd literally take that little tripod or a bank stick and a little light bag and some bread and stuff like that. You can walk up and down the river there just catching, just following them. But if you can get them feeding and holding in an area, you'll get a couple of fish out, and then what you'll have to do is they'll just spook. As soon as they spook, then you've got to move up or down river, depending on what way the tide's moving. But no, as I said, we're trying. That's all you can do. Well, guys, just weren't to be. Just weren't to be. I mean, we're just approached to high water now, and unfortunately, just not been those signs. I mean, the odds fish surfacing here and there, but not what I would have thought for this sort of size tide, really. I mean, especially the amount of ground bait we put in at the beginning, and has obviously been feeding throughout time. I mean, I'm not sure how much we got left, but I would have thought we've probably used 1/4 of a bucket, and to be fair, it's probably enough for the session. As I said, it's one thing about mulleting, you can't get them every time, and as many decent mullet anglers will tell you, I mean, I'm by far one of the best mullet anglers in the world. It's something which I'll pick up here and there, and I thoroughly enjoy it. But it's a big learning curve for anyone who hasn't fished for them. I mean, they can be very finicky at times, and they can be very frustrating. And as Gav said earlier on, you're fishing for passing fish. And especially where we are, even if like harbours and stuff, you can normally find the fish, bred up areas and get them to hold. Where this here, really, there's nothing to say. The mullet in the Plym at the moment could be going off in different areas and stuff like that. Tomorrow could be totally different. You can come up here tomorrow and see loads of mullet. Just one of them things, isn't it? It's been a lovely night, and for me, I'm going to get home and get to bed because I've got a long day again tomorrow. But I hope everybody's having a good week, and we roll on the weekend. Hopefully we can get out and target a place, fingers crossed. It's the forecast isn't brilliant, but you have clear water, which is probably the main thing for it for me. So we've got some fresh blacks ordered from Hooker's Baits, hopefully coming Friday, and hopefully we'll get out and see if we can get a few fish out. From me, down in Plymouth, tight lines, till the next time.